All right, UltraSync. This is Dr. V, your host, and you're gonna get the ultimate in Web3 entrepreneurship and consciousness. I'm here on a lovely walk here in North London,
East London.
East London, right, East London. And I'm with Miki Elson, a real revolutionary, somebody who blew my mind when recently I was pulled into the vortex of creativity that he has created around this project called ArtSect. And you need to really find out more about this. So, Miki, tell me more. Like, what's ArtSect?
So ArtSect NFT gallery is a whole bunch of complex new Web3 situations. It is an NFT gallery IRL, which means in real life, but also in the metaverse. We are a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, which means we run the company via a new working method on the blockchain, social tokens, value accrual, lots of interesting.
So much to unpack there. So much to unpack there. So let's start with first. This is a gallery that's both IRL it's both in real life and also in the metaverse, in virtual, right? It's a hybrid.
Yeah. So most people are used to NFTs just being digital, just being on OpenSea or one of the platforms. We were one of the first or third in the world to start blending in real life activities or traditional contemporary fine art activities with the metaverse games, the crypto voxels assets, and really show mixed reality exhibitions.
Right. So obviously people are really getting into this whole space right now from all the different directions, whether it's artists and brands as well, and lots of individuals as well, people who want to understand this new economy that we're creating, and NFTs have been huge in this. So where do you sit? Where does your group sit in this whole new movement, in this whole new development around NFTs? Like, is it creation? Is it the creation part? Is it the using it in new ways? Like, where do you guys? How does ArtSect intersect and play with this emerging NFT world?
So traditional East Londonists that we are, we're definitely on the sociology and trying to push the innovation of arts and culture forward with the technology. So we're bringing in the beautiful art, we're bringing in the amazing people, but actually it's the collective and the way this operates in a different mechanism to old businesses, to centralized businesses. This is actually where we're trying to focus on.
Right. So that's what you mentioned. You talked about the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization, which some may have heard about. Some are obviously very deep into it, but some people who are just getting into the crypto space, it could be quite new for them. They don't really, it's something. It's a new concept that to wrap your head around for somebody who's encountering it for the first time. I remember when I first encountered it a couple of years ago, it was like, wow, what the hell? Like, what is this? It sounds like science fiction, but it's not science fiction. It's real. It's like these guys, your collective of creators and artists here is actually organized in that form. So can you tell us more about it? Like, how does that work for you guys? Why is ArtSect organized as a DAO? And what does that mean?
So the same, when we all found out about it, curious, confused, slightly science fiction, and just like everyone, again, as we're learning about smart contracts and identities and ways to access Web3 or blockchain, and finding out that these people have set up new organizations with new structures of dealing with operations, that becomes exciting. So we were already running a few similar concepts, and in 2020 we were researching the DAOs, different collective structures, and this was as the NFTs and the metaverse were gaining traction, gaining popularity, and as passionate I suppose artist collectives, we've always been looking at these structures, so it was very natural and I suppose easy for us to start outlaying this into the system, testing it out. Again, as you said, it's really new, and the softwares are still new and in development, so there's lots and lots of testing going on.
Okay, so that's the backstory of ArtSect, and that's the history and like what does it look like now? How many people are there part of it? What do you guys do? What's your focus as a group?
So yeah, there's 12 in the core DAO team at the moment, and we're just in talks with the next stage of investors and partners to bring on quite a huge amount of people, actually, and really amazing people into the next pods or departments, as we call them in the DAO. So currently we have NFT production departments, VR, metaverse, Web3 research, tokenomics, DeFi trading. So a lot of very interesting new departments for our metaverse NFT business.
And when you say community members, I mean, I've seen it, like there's people who are really part of this and who are really like, you see, like finding a community and a place where they have a voice and a place where they can co-create and where their creativity is appreciated. And that was, I found that so impressive when I first encountered this community. And you just said so many different actual verticals and actual kind of activities that the group is in. And you also, like, there was just so much to unpack. You also mentioned the DAO structure that you guys have set up, or that you're like in the process of like creating and refining. But okay, let's first get a bit more on the activities. So you said NFT production, and there's a galleries, right? Like there's the events. Like where's the main focus right now in terms of activities, and how do they connect?
Yeah, so our main focus is with the physical exhibitions and blending what we call phygital exhibitions or metaverse exhibitions into these physical. So the art world or traditional art world in London, physical galleries have a certain selection of verticals, artworks for offer, and importantly centralized systems that manage them. So the ways in which we manage our exhibitions, concepts and ideas is without that centralized structure, which leaves us with freedom to look into a lot more verticals a lot earlier. So we've been digital fashion, we've had digital fashion parties, activations for brands, and moving along those lines. Again, NFT production in terms of traditional gallery arts production, but with a decentralized ownership ledger base rather than the usual.
Dope. So yeah, like you're on that interface, and where physical and digital, what you call, I really can't stand the word, to be honest with you. Like it's like a word that's like, but yeah, there's no better one, I guess, right now, right? Like,
there's not, yeah, I think it came from the art students, I think, but yeah, phygital, mixed reality, blended reality,
hybrid reality, yeah, for sure. So in that space, you're really like doing avant-garde shit. Like I've seen some of it, and we work on both sides with both the artists and the brands as well. So there seems to be like, from your side, maybe that's also your own background a little bit that plays into it. You're not like only to one side or the other. Right?
So yeah, actually, so we're all the group run and have jobs in the creative industries in London anyway. So I've always worked for creative agencies, brand side in London, games, fashion, etc. Jan worked film and set design, making things look amazing. Dom as well, she works with galleries and making their productions look amazing. So the team's really well based in the creative industries anyway, which gives us a good insight into how to shape this new industry that we're building. Really.
And how does it look like in practice when when something comes up and you're like, hey, let's experiment with it, let's build this and let's get that group. How does it work in practice when ArtSect tackles a venture or a project? Like, what does that dynamic look like?
Well, I think that's why it's so exciting, because if you look at business transformation, which we've all been in, we've come from the old top-down structures, then we all did agile training and scrum training, now we're all digital nomads, and then we're going to this new future that's being built. And so agile, hectic, slightly disorganized, we've become used to rapidly working in these ways but becoming innovative with these processes. So we get a brief, we have some exhibitions next year, plans, etc., but the way in which we arrange is not like any of the agencies or organizations that we used to work for. So it's a lot more democratic, equal. Ideas can come from any, and we always try, and that's an within the business. We always try and ensure there's equal footing for all creative ideas.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned obviously the DAO setup, which I think is so like sets this project. It's almost like you have the everybody right now saying, putting it on their flags and saying that we're agile, we're decentralized, or we're like whatever, fluid. Everybody can, everybody does that. All the big corporates, they all have they change their offices now, and people have some like places
Open
where they can sit
plan.
around, and but a lot of the times it's like they're not walking the walk, they're not, it's just talk, right? It's just some kind of decorations, and in reality, people in those organizations are still pretty much working with their line managers and their, like direct kind of line of command, and they're keeping things secret from each other and not talking with others and trying to take credit for stuff and so on. So, right? Like we know all of that, right? And it's like there's a wave of new organizations which maybe the mainstream does not know about yet, but which out of this Web3 world is starting to emerge, and where I think ArtSect is doing so much dope work that say like, we're going to use the technologies that we have here, namely the DAO, right, to just kind of to go to the next level and actually make it like this, like actually make the entire form of the organization be, fluid and situational and self-organized, right?
Well, that's the main thing. Like you said, those brand words that companies like to throw around, that it takes, I suppose, bravery, tenacity, and actual wanting to solve with innovation to do those mechanisms. So yeah, I think it's quite a hard one to actually achieve, especially when if you've got a creative department that's now got to meet up in equality with finance or tokenomics. There's some really difficult discussions to have there, but it causes us all to evolve through osmosis, shared learning. The first three groupings of the departments are tech, creative and business, and then off tech, creative and business we have DeFi, tokenomics, governance, which are all super new, and then we have NFT production, metaverse production, Web3 production, DAO, smart contract coding and software, and then the usual creative departments around VR, AR, graphic design and video. So there's almost, in one lens you could see a traditional creative agency there, and then you could also see a tech company and a governance stream. But the way these three interact together is the key to it being an organization.
And also a movement in some ways, right? It also has that aspect. It's a movement too, right? Like it feels like a movement.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. So those are the two terms we try and use, the decentralized art movement or the decentralized arts organization. So as you said, it's fluid.
Bro, I mean, think about it, it's crazy. Like how now these new types of organization, association, the fact that we don't have the words to describe them, or that we have to use all of this combination of words, it just shows you that, we're creating a new world. It's, right? Like, it's time to create a new world. It means a new socio-economic structures, new social interactions, new ways for people to define who they are, how they get remunerated. So that's another question. Like, I'd love to see from you guys, hear from you guys, how does it, let's get this helicopter guy do his thing too. But, and remuneration, obviously, is a topic, we're still operating within the old world, and we need to pay bills and rent and all kinds of things. So how do you guys handle this in ArtSect? Like, how do you handle how people get compensated for what they create if so much of the creation is like fluid and situational and depending on what somebody wants to contribute in that situation? What's the thinking there?
So super complex answer, but luckily with blockchain everything's coded, trackable, programmable, so all of the payouts and structures with these Web3 or blockchain principles are always automated and trustless. So if we came up with a deal on NFTs or a business or a metaverse asset, we could pay out ourselves coded in those wallets, or there's a variety of ways to ensure your programming always works. And then when you get to the tokenomics level, which is I suppose the currency that you're being paid in, there's a few nuances to that issue. So people are either using a stable coin to pay their staff, which is what we do. So you'd have
Which one are you using?
USDT, but there's a whole bunch of different ones. So a project would usually have its own token that it can pay staff in, and it would back its own token with a selection of other tokens, whether these are utility such as Ethereum, Polkadot, etc., or these are currency tokens such as USDT or Tether. And the way these two pools of tokens interact for that business and the way you would pay your staff does differ by situation, but essentially they're using these vaults of either utility or stablecoin reserves to pay their staff in a trustless and automated way.
Right. So yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of it will come down to how exactly, the governance works, how the consensus around distribution works, how people make decisions on where value goes. So I mean, I think there's so much work to be done, so much experimenting and creating around DAOs. So I have a whole lot more to to discuss with you and to dig deeper into around DAOs. But should we go to the spot, like one of the the ArtSect spot, like the gallery? Let's do that. Yeah.
Check it out.
Good. Okay, so here we are at the ArtSect HQ, and just continuing that conversation about remuneration and compensation and the exchange of value and the flows of value. Obviously, there's a lot of thoughts in this system that you have created, and that that's being co-created by so many dope next level people. What's the token side going to be? Is there going to be a token that people can buy, that the general public can buy, or just patrons that want to support the art, or what does that look like?
So yeah, the utility token is going to be a patronage token, as we want to try and stay away from what people call the degen behavior. So lots of trading activity. We want to keep it to regenerative Web3 sustainability loop modeling. So just ways that we can use that utility token. Our patrons of the digital art to all support the artists and curators as a community.
Right. So you want to avoid the kind of speculative, buying and selling without any regard for what the actual value is that's being created, just like on a speculative hype. So right, and it's interesting that you're that you're positioning regen against degen, in that way. But how does that work? I know you have some kind of detailed levels as well that people can get involved in. Can you expand on that, what the levels are?
Yeah, so in the first point, the regens and the degens, so trading activity is largely led and lots of price at the moment by day traders, whales, and what people have kind of tagged degen, or in the Twitter things aping in. So it's just very tradery, money focused behavior, and the incentives in those people or groups is profit. So they're not hugely looking into, I mean, they are doing their research on a token's long lasting capacities, but they're in there for the profits, not usually the ideology, the community. And we tend to see that these kind of investors are out early. So the latest section of Web3 companies, DAOs, decentralized companies are focusing on ways to ensure that they can get long-term users engaged with the project, basically.
Right. So how do you do, again, how do you solve, or how are you guys creating the level of participation from token holders? What's the voting that token holders can get engaged in? Is the voting weighted according to how many tokens you hold? What's your thinking there?
So, I mean, it's a shame we can't use the thing to describe. It's a very complex set of modeling is the answer to that question, but we're using a very new concept that Olympus DAO has developed called dual token holographic consensus. So most token weighted societies, like you said, have whales can influence this. If it's one vote, one share, one purchase, if I had £1 million or 10 million, I can buy out that community and start influencing the decision. So dual token holographic consensus is where you have two tokens, one that is the crowd-funded token and one that is the governance NFT, and then there's various ways that these interact to ensure holistic growth of that company rather than kind of the influence being sucked out.
Great. Yeah, I mean that's like such a important ways of of experimenting and creating that level of participation. I mean, people who are looking into this, they have come across this problem. A lot of people have come across this problem. Vitalik wrote as well against like the token weighted voting, and there's people experimenting with different ways to solve this, from like proof of participation or like this method that you're mentioning, like holographic voting. Is that what it is? Dual.
Yeah, dual tokens. So yeah, there's lots of methods. If you look, they started with the one share, one vote, and as Vitalik and lots of people have mentioned, that didn't work. Then there's quadratic voting, which is different weighted votings. Then there's reputation burning, which seems quite cool, in that if you bought 10 million tokens and I bought 5, if we were still participating in the group and I was participating more, your reputation would still burn away, whereas mine would grow. So there's ways for the influence to be more carefully balanced there. And then R1 uses that dual token.
Right. So a lot of it comes down to really mathematics and game theory and like complex systems thinking and systems theory, which I think is so exciting. Like when you're like seeing how abstract principles are being put to use to create organizational forms and societies, essentially societies. But like apart from the technical problem, what is the values or the ethos that motivates ArtSect in making these decisions, right? Like how would you say, like what is the key top value that you want to be represented or reflected in these decisions as they're being made? And obviously other people who are maybe having DAOs right now, right, that they have the same ideas and decisions and questions that they have to go through. So this could be so like insightful for the millions of hundreds, thousands of thousands of other DAOs that in future will be set up, like when they look back to the pioneers, right, that are doing this. So again, like what's the values that you're as a group you want to see represented in the decisions that you're making about the voting, about something so technical as like the voting mechanism?
Yeah, so the most important thing, which is why we call ourselves a catalyst organization rather than a gallery or a shop or a specific DAO, is that the way the pods work, the compartments of the DAO and the different experts or groups within that, they are allowed free decision making within their budget. And so it's a very simple distinction between centralized and decentralized, but it has a lot of significance in the way that plays out. So a usual business would be fixed and it does a gallery or a shop, etc. And then the way we've positioned the voting, the DAO, the incentives is that they can be free, essentially within the parameters of their department, but they obviously have to make profit or value or not break the business from that side. So if Creative wants to launch a film festival or a metaverse architecture festival or any number of creative ideas, they're free to do that as long as it fits within the ethos of the organization and keeps it growing. And the same with the economics team, they can be looking at reserve coins.
Yeah, dope. Totally. But is again, I gotta like just like like press you more on that. Is the ethos something that you want to write down, or is it just like, you know, it's there and you know it, like otherwise you wouldn't be here? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it that implicit thing, or is it like something that you're gonna write a manifesto and be like, you know, here's the ArtSect little booklet that everybody's gonna hold? Like, where are you in that spectrum?
So it's a hard one to describe, but we are committed as a catalyst organization to always using the most innovative practices and taking the widest themes of education to push our work. So it can never be fixed. That's why it's an important algorithm with the DAO, because if we're setting diversity today, what does that mean tomorrow or next week? And if we're doing NFTs or one set of construction today, it will be wrong tomorrow and the day after. So a really important part of the manifesto is to stay algorithmic and free within the departments rather than fixed. So
So the ethos is something implicit.
I think the ethos is to educate and always stay growing and learning. So everyone's amazing creative and always will continue to be an amazing creative, but committing with the DAO structure to always work in a collaborative, open sourced, growing way it really is the crux. And it sounds simple and maybe not a proper manifesto, but if you look at all other, let's just take galleries as an example here, they are fixed. They have a brand, a focus, and this is what they do. And they can write their manifesto down on a piece of paper. And it was good when they came up with it, but maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, it should be reviewed. So that's the crux of ours, is that we're, again, like an educational facility. Some of these might be coming to their end of their days now and should innovate. And so maybe the core of that educational group should be to innovate rather than to teach the classics or...
Right. It's interesting, actually, in the art world, you have manifestos, right? Like, in the art world, groups get together and they write a manifesto right away, right? That now you're a thing, you wrote a manifesto, right? And it's strange because you have that in the art world, and where else? Only in politics, right? In like, like Mao had a manifesto, right? Or whatever, like some political revolutionaries, they wrote like a manifesto, right? So it's really interesting how this movement, this DAO, and ArtSect in some ways, is like representative of this shift that's happening, because, it's art and culture, but it's also social organization, right? It's also politics somehow, right? Like, maybe like the DGov kind of aspect is now not so much seen by everybody yet, but actually is like super important in the innovation that's happening. Right? Like, where do you see like let me put it this way. Do you see something political about do you feel there is some political dimension to what ArtSect is doing and what similar organizations right now, similar like DAOs in the world, are starting to do?
Definitely. So if you look, which is why blockchain is such a complex subject, and the best way to look at it is philosophy, politics and economics, the study of the same triangle. So you could look at the money or the tokenization aspect or the ideology and the philosophy and politics within those. And you can definitely see there is an evolution going on. I'll talk myself into a corner then. What did you say again?
Say again, like, so there is, you say like politics, philosophy, economics, like, is there something political about being part of ArtSect or about being part of a DAO, like a groundbreaking, culturally relevant DAO like ArtSect?
So that's what these Web3 DAO, arts DAOs are really heading at. So there's the technology, there's the design, there's the surface level of what they're achieving. But like the Bauhaus or these other movements before them, there's an ideology and a focus, a politics there that people are trying to achieve. And like we were discussing the other day, this digital renaissance, if you look at a lot of the innovations and ideas, it's really about evolution of people and structures. So as you said, we're an arts gallery and we should have more of an arts manifesto, but our sociological de-governance manifesto is the real crux, like with all these other DAOs. So what they're trying to achieve through different forms of collaboration I suppose, is the project, is the artwork, and it is the way that these people are thinking about operating in the world.
So, like, yeah, man, like listening to you right now, map out the different, dimension. First, before I go into, did this start at some point in your head, like as some kind of nucleus, as some kind of, like, obviously, and this is obviously a decentralized, community-driven thing. So it's now, I'm surely going to be very different to how it started initially, right? But at some point there was a seed, right? What was that seed?
Well, I think if you look at the pathway of all of our generations and where we're at now, late stage capitalism, the end of the Silicon Valley, Amazon, Facebook, 10 years, 20 years, and we've learnt a lot and we've seen a lot. And we did a lot as well in our careers, and we've really seen how the internet's worked. And so I suppose it's hard to tell on our progressive journey in all of us shaping this, but definitely where we've got to now, I'm seeing a really intelligent, forward-thinking entrepreneur, business person that they're going to make their money, they've got really cool ideas, they're very skilled, but there's now something more that everyone's shooting for, that's just a bit beyond all of those kind of arbitrary achievements. And yeah, where that is coming from is a very interesting, I can't thoroughly answer it. We're very passionately inspired, not necessarily status or money inspired anymore. Ideologically inspired. So we've been working on it for a while. I've always been very libertarian, slightly activist when I was younger, and I've always wanted to work in politics, change, transformation. And I think seeing Instagrammy, Facebook culture that we're all involved in and what could be that we could possibly shape in the future, I think maybe that is exciting for us all. In our position now.
Yeah, it's really like, this is why I'm personally so happy that we're starting to look into UltraSync with a project like ArtSect and presenting it to people, because like there's this shift happening where this Web3 that's being created right now, this new movement that's being created, is so much more than just another technology fad or another kind of phase of the latest trends that's going to come and go and so on and so forth. This is literally like where that entrepreneurial drive and impetus that became like ubiquitous in the previous, in the beginning of the digital revolution, is now being turned on the very form and the very structure and the very core of life and of social life, right? It's not anymore just like, okay, let's reinvent how this business makes money, which was before, right? It's now like, let's reinvent fucking life, right? And how we as a society get together and live, right? And exactly like somebody or a group like ArtSect is like doing that, like is in the forefront of doing that, right? And like reinventing the new life forms, right? So what do you think, obviously a lot of other people are starting, or want to get started now. We have had a lot of DAOs like come out recently. We had people getting more educated and informed about it. What would you say to somebody who's watching this now and who's seeing this and who's having that diffuse feeling that, like, I don't know yet completely what this is, but I want to get involved. I want to get started. I want to do something. Like, what would you say to that person, to that young guy or gal or
So firstly, dive in, because passion and energy, that's what it's about, and we're all shaping it. So you're not too late, you're not too stupid, we're all really confused, 100%. But we're just rocketing forward and live shaping it. So definitely standing on the edge and watching, hugely overwhelming. But when you get your mini passion, your niche, and you just, so there's a few inspirations that led us and a few of the early crypto people, and they have a few phrases. So irresponsibly long is one of my favorite phrases from theirs, which is finance word is to stay long on your investment, and irresponsibly long was an NFT word that came out last year from people who'd made crypto wealth and were diving into some really long-term, quite mad projects that inspired us to do our IRL gallery well before anyone understood what that meant. So yeah, I think everyone's just pushing it. Like a really interesting idea.
Bro, this sounds all like we're creating, you know, a new world where people freely organize and freely co-create, right? And it's all algorithmic and it's all like, right? There's no bias in there because it's like, you know, it's kind of in the code, right? I mean, obviously, no, the code can also needs to be checked and so on and so forth. But it's light years above and beyond like what we had before, right? But so where do you see like are governments going to try and stop this? Like, are governments going to see that DAOs are a threat, or this movement or a Web3 movement is a threat?
Definitely. So yeah, definitely governments would see that blockchain, the currencies, the utility, and the way people are changing to not need these governments is a threat. Obviously, a centralized entity kind of only really exists to arbitrarily manage people who apparently can't trust each other. But in this day and age, that's not true. So the technology, the evolution, this is just not a case anymore. So when we look at DAOs, blockchain, Bitcoin, the arguments they use are not true, and so it's not a technology argument, it's a geopolitical issue, really. So do we need government? Could we use a DAO? Obviously, yes, we could, and no, we don't need a government. But the journey and discourse to getting to that situation, yeah, I can imagine they'd be really scared. So if you see, again, currencies, the dollar, the pound, any of these fiat currencies, which means made up in Latin, by the way, then you can see these central banks are going to want to hold on to that power, and having tokenized, authentic, self-governing communities printing or creating their own value systems is, yeah, a big worry for those.
Right. So in the future, like, you know, if we have like, or if we start to look into the future to some extent, obviously, right, like we're in the here and now, and we're co-creating in the here and now, and making things happen and like going with the flow. But it's always important to like have a vision and have a perspective and be able to see the macro as well, right? And how things fit together. So obviously we know that there will be some clashes, there will be some, you know, at some point people will like wake up and smell the coffee and be like, you know, wait a moment, this thing is undermining our systems. And there's like vested interest there, and people are like, do we want to just give up all this, you know, all these systems that we have built? And there will be clashes, right? But what do you see as the future? Like, what will be the future of what will be the future of what we're doing now? Where do you see ArtSect? Like, what's the end game?
They don't want to get me shot, but yeah, when you look at, I always try and go by history modeling, so Ray Dalio and the other patterners, and if you look at the last time all of this happened in the old Renaissance, we're coming into our new digital Renaissance now, and especially in the UK, they call the printing presses decentralized technology, and that unwieldy people were getting access to printing education, and it was just damaging for the world. And then you can see how that panned out with various colleges and education. So that was good for the world. And I think this is definitely starting to emerge now when you look at all the groups. So of course there's going to be a push and pull from currencies and governments and councils and other crypto groups that don't want to thoroughly link up. But in this battle and pendulum, yeah, there will be changes. We can't predict them, but if we look back from the last Renaissance, it was good, and it played out really well. So I suppose it's just amazing that we're all part of it, and you, me, the gang are all shaping that.
Yeah, our prior incarnations, you know, may have been part of the previous renaissances in some shape or form. Who knows? But you know, yeah, it's a digital renaissance happening. It's like that's true. It's like it's an age of awakening happening, which is technologically driven, but obviously in which consciousness plays, and the growing kind of connected and collective consciousness plays the driving force, right? But you still evaded the question. Like, that was about ArtSect. Like, what's ArtSect's end game?
So arts, again, like you said, catalyst culture. Well, I was saying catalyst culture. So there's a lot of verticals in ArtSect, and as we said in the manifesto, we're committed to evolution, change, and psychology.
Right.
So evolving as much groups and people's mentality in these different verticals, from avatars of fashion and identity to navigating the metaverse to utility tokens and social freedom. We're very much invested in helping people navigate that.
Right. And then see what comes. And see what comes. Instead of saying from the outset, we're gonna be this, right? Like we're gonna be the biggest XYZ or whatever, right?
Well, if I'll give you one inflammatory thing if you want to do that. So we have our IRL property goals, and we have 3 here, and I've never...
3 warehouses.
Yeah, 3 warehouses in London that we have, and we're looking to expand Portugal, Mexico, across the world, and I've never been a massive fan of nation or understanding of these specific political borders. So very much in our long-term plans is to have how we navigate assets and resources on the DAO freely, like you would Airbnb or WeWork in the blockchain. We would like that to happen with our property network and our collaborators.
To disrupt that type of living, co-creating, co-living kind of model?
Or to grow that co-living model. So when you, yeah, I mean, it's a society in itself. When you look at the philosophy, economics, politics, that is what a centralized entity uses to manage its people. So you have a fiat currency, a government, and a police system. But modern evolved societies don't need that. So if you're an arts community and you have your own currency, your own ideology, and your own groups that look after this, you don't really need these other entities to manage. It's actually inefficient.
I love that. You're very humble about how you're expressing it, but actually if somebody reads between the lines, you just said like we're going to be our own state across different nations, like we're going to have our own state across 4 different sovereign nations. I love that.
It will grow.
Yeah. Amazing. So how do people get involved into ArtSect?
Yeah, so there's 3 different ways. If you're a curator, an artist, or a patron, you can either come on the patronage token on our juice box. You can donate artwork to join our curators collection in the DAO, and then you could become a curator as well, which is the level that we all manage the business from.
Amazing. So we're going to put all the links below, and you're going to be able to find ways to get engaged with ArtSect, right?
Yep. Come get involved, either East London or the Metaverse. Click below and give us a visit.
Beautiful. So all of that is ready. All of that is there. The time is now. Sync yourself up. Let's go.